we'll talk about that, back half of that in a moment. I mean, we're supposed to talk about Trump, and I have a lot of questions on your reporting, but
you have other things on your mind right now?
Kind of stunned.
Yeah. During a recent interview with Republican Congressman Ralph Norman, CNN reporter Kaitlan Collins asked whether he had any regrets about that one time that he texted Donald Trump asking him to declare martial law just days before Joe Biden was inaugurated. And Ralph Norman's response visibly stunned Kaitlan Collins. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, but just for context, Ralph Norman is a Republican congressman from South Carolina. And even though he was a strident Trump supporter, as we're about to dive into, in the Republican primary, he has endorsed Nikki Haley, the last man standing against Trump in the Republican primary. So he's kind of, a bit of a black sheep among the House Republican Conference. And it's that context which, predicated the interview with Kaitlan Collins. But during the interview, Kaitlan Collins is like, look, I've never talked to you before, and I want to ask you about a text message. And just for context, I want to provide you what the text message said. So on January 17th, 2021, which is 11 days after the January 6th insurrection and just 3 days before Biden was inaugurated, Ralph Norman sent a text message to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And this is what the text message said. Mark, in seeing what's happening so quickly and reading about the Dominion lawsuits attempting to stop any meaningful investigation, we are at a point of no return in saving our republic. 2 exclamation points. Our, in all caps, last hope is invoking martial law. 2 exclamation points. Please urge to the president to do so. I think he meant to say, please urge the president to do so. And that was in all caps. And he misspelled martial law. That's relevant. So this is a Republican congressman asking the president of the United States at the time, Donald Trump, to declare martial law just 3 days before he was supposed to leave office. That's the context. Well, just you wait. I just want you to see how he answers this. This is crazy.
Voters. And you say the voters should be the ones to decide. Obviously, everyone agrees with that. But when you talk about what the voters decide, I have to ask you, because you and I have never spoken before in an interview, about a text message that you sent to Mark Meadows. It was 3 days before President Biden was inaugurated, and you were urging the White House to use the U.S. military to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Do you regret sending that message?
The only thing I regret, I misspelled martial law. I misspelled that. No, I didn't. Look.
Before he goes on, just note that as she's asking the question, please, there's so much packed into this. As she's asking the question, setting it up, you sent a text message asking Donald Trump to use the military to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. He doesn't shake his head. He doesn't object to the premise. He's nodding along. Yes, I did that. I did ask Donald Trump to prevent the peaceful transfer of power with the military. And then he smiles when she concludes the question. Very creepy. Now let's hear him try to justify it.
Everything happened so quick in that election. The time that was given to see if the ballots were real, see if, you've seen 2,000 mules. Most people have. There's a lot of questions. What's wrong with
created by
time?
a guy that Trump pardoned.
Created by who?
Wasn't that created by a guy that Trump pardoned? I mean, the point of it is that movie is not based in reality. There is no election fraud, and their courts have proven that. Republican judges that were appointed by Republican presidents have noted that. I mean, there was no evidence of that by the time January 17th rolled around, Congressman.
Well, there were questions.
There were questions, right? Okay, well, listen, anybody can ask a question at any time about any settled fact. We know the earth is round. I can ask a question. Is the earth really round? That's not insightful. It's not particularly substantive. Anybody can ask any questions, the ability to form words and let them leave the mouth, right? That's his argument. Well, listen, it was perfectly reasonable for me to ask Donald Trump to declare martial law because people had questions. Well, you were the ones asking the questions, right? Just imagine a world in which it's 2016. Donald Trump wins the election. Hillary Clinton goes to then Vice President Joe Biden, a Democrat, and says, Joe, did Donald Trump really win the election? And Joe's like, you know what? I don't know. People are asking questions. We don't know. People are asking questions. Hey, Barack. And then he asked President Obama, the sitting president at the time, to declare martial law just 3 days before Donald Trump was to be inaugurated. Imagine the backlash that would have gotten from Republicans and the right, and honestly, most independents, and I imagine most Democrats, because that would be very authoritarian and tyrannical. But when Republicans try to do it, it's okay. Again, that asymmetry, utterly disturbing. We've got a couple more clips to play, but I'll also point out that every time the 2020 election is audited and forensically examined, more often than not, Joe Biden gets more votes. Like this was from the 15th of January, so just a couple of days ago. Virginia County finds 4,000 misreported 2020 votes, shorting Biden. Biden actually won 4,000 more votes in Virginia than had been previously anticipated. I want to play a couple more clips here from, again, the continuation of this interview between Norman and Kaitlan Collins.
But no, I don't regret that at all. And it's still questions that linger today. But we
Sir,
have got to get our voting right.
what questions are there that linger today? Because this is really important. We are approaching another election, and when you talk to Republican voters, in CNN exit polls, half of them don't believe that Joe Biden legitimately won the election, which he did. And calling for martial law because you have questions about the election, I think most people would agree is subverting the will of voters that you often talk about that are so important.
No, look. To keep this system honest, photo voter ID, which the Democrats tried to circumvent, they've been trying to circumvent that. What they're doing with the illegal aliens, with the vote, get them registered to vote, is not right. That's what I'm talking about.
What does that have to do with
making sure
that's you calling for martial law,
Kaitlan,
Congressman?
Look, I texted Mark Meadows. That's the only person. He didn't have the power. I asked him. Donald Trump was shocked too.
He was the chief of staff at the White House. Did he respond to your message that day? I don't think you've ever made clear what his acknowledgement of your message was.
I don't think everything was going on. Everything was so fast. I don't think he did. But the bottom line is we got to have secure elections, and whatever that takes. There are a lot of questions that still exist. You've seen the lawsuits that were there. But no, I wouldn't take it back. I misspelled it. I should have taken the time. I was in a hurry, but no, I would not. I don't regret that.
Those lawsuits were all thrown out. None of them amounted to anything. The only place where they found they miscounted, Biden actually had a bigger margin than he initially did. Congressman, it is striking to hear you say that you stand by asking for martial law to be declared 3 days before Biden was elected.
So a couple of things. Kaitlan Collins is just killing this, knocking this out of the park. I mean, not just gently pushing back. She is, this is journalistic ethics at its peak. She's saying, you're lying. Those claims are false. It's not true. I'm not going to pretend or suggest that they're possibly true. You lost all the lawsuits. And it's also a shocking hypocrisy, given that you're talking about the importance of voting and votes mattering in this particular election. And again, by the way, we have an election coming up. So does that mean no matter what the outcome is, let's say Donald Trump defeats President Biden in the 2024 election, by Ralph Norman's logic, Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are perfectly within their rights to just declare martial law and just prevent it, right? Because anybody could ask questions. Anybody could ask questions about, the outcome of the next election. Folks, this is insane. This can't be the standard. And again, not only was Kaitlan Collins visibly disgusted in the conversation with Ralph Norman, but she also talks about it, and her disgust kind of lingers after the interview when she's talking with New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman.
So thank you, Congressman Ralph Norman, for your time tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll talk about that. Back half of that in a moment. I am joined tonight by CNN political analyst and senior political correspondent from the New York Times, Maggie Haberman. We're supposed to talk about Trump, and I have a lot of questions on your reporting, but
you have other things on your mind right now?
Kind of stunned that he says the only, because for people who didn't see the text, he spelled Marshall M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L, not M-A-R-T. He didn't spell it correctly. And he says that's the only thing he regrets about that.
Continuity has not really been anybody's strong suit in talking about elections, at least on the Republican side, since 2020. As you noted, he is talking about how it's up to the will of the voters, martial law, would not be in keeping with that 3 days before the inauguration. So, and saying there's still questions because Donald Trump keeps saying there's questions. And so there's a whole group of people who follow him who are going along with that. But it is a prelude, I think, to what we are going to see over the next 9 months. And so if you are hearing that from the only person in the House who is backing Donald Trump's opponent, think about what that's going to look like on a broader scale.
So again, not much to say. I love the fact that Kaitlan Collins isn't even trying to hide her disgust and her disappointment and her shame. No journalist should. Folks, this is not normal. It should not be normalized, and we shouldn't pretend this is a both sides issue. This is a uniquely Republican problem. It must be treated as such, and it's not a minor problem. It is a major problem. It's a potential existential threat to the Republic problem, and they need to be relentlessly called out for it, relentlessly fact-checked, relentlessly harangued for answers. And quite frankly, I wish Kaitlan Collins and Jake Tapper and other journalists who have the opportunity to talk to Ralph Norman and others like them to ask the hypothetical, as I did to you. What if the shoe was on the other foot? What if it had been Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton in 2016 when your guy, Donald Trump, won? Or right now, Joe Biden is president. Kamala Harris, a Democrat, is vice president. What if it happens in 2024? Is it okay when a Democrat wants to declare martial law? It's never happened because it's a problem unique to your party. But how would you feel about it then, Congressman, Senator, Speaker, ex-president, whoever? Put them on the spot. Put them on the spot with a camera on their face and make them answer. Yeah, actually, sure, it is okay when Democrats want to declare martial law to prevent Republicans from winning elections, or let them say, no, only we're allowed to do that. Put them on the spot and get them on the record and let the American people see how dishonest and hypocritical these cowards are. Let me know what you think in the comments.